Hey everyone, early morning. I am about to shower, but before that I wanted to record a quick vlog, specifically because last night I played through the entire first week of TWEWY. If you don't know, The World Ends With You takes place over 3 weeks, and then some in the extended edition that I'm playing on Switch. But yeah, I rocketed through the entire first third of the game because, god, man, I love TWEWY, but I wanted to talk about this because it got me thinking how, you know, regardless of every game I've played lately, games really are not interested broadly, and a lot of game writers have said as much as well, people I respect. Matt Colville has talked about this too. Games broadly do not set out to tell stories the way we traditionally understand them in literature, and they don't have to. First, like, let's acknowledge that, you know, it's a different medium. Right, the medium is the message. You can tell stories through mechanics. You can tell them in different ways. But very little quality narrative design is done in the gaming space as compared to literature, which you might expect, sure. But it's really refreshing then when you play a game that actually does. Especially one that I feel like people, like the mass market or whatever, might write off as too anime or too cringe because, like, it's a Nomura game, right? Like, design-wise, the characters' designs. I actually forget how far in Nomura is. Anyway, in the dev process of that game. But, like, I can see TWEWY being largely discarded by, like, the Western audience, and they really shouldn't because it tells a good-ass story. And I'm just gonna talk about the first week because it is so fucking refreshing to play. So when I say character development, or like this game doesn't have character development, like Golden Sun or whatever I'm bitching about, because this or that character didn't get a ton of screen time, didn't do a lot of stuff, and didn't meaningfully change from who they were at the start. That's not inherently necessary to make a good game or a good game story. Other people who I respect have pointed that certain other RPG characters don't really change, and those game stories are fine, and that's like actually, you know, the fulcrum by which the story turns is the lack of development, which is fair enough. I guess there's a context, or let's say there's like a situation for everything to work. But broadly, I would say characters benefit, and your game story benefits too from development. Like, I've often said, it is generally the case that a main character in a work of fiction is someone with something to learn. It is very rare that that's not the case. Like, villains tend to be people who are set in their specific way of doing things, and that ends up being their downfall. Like in the Great Monomyth, like in how stories are conceived of by our culture, or all humans. Anyway, ignoring that, so TWEWY starts with a real fuck-ass kid, Neku Sakuraba, who everyone, like, he's an asshole to everybody. He doesn't like people. He has amnesia, which admittedly tropey, but whatever. And he's a loner who doesn't like being around, you know, anyone. And yet he's trapped in Shibuya, massive Japanese shopping district. I don't know. I was there. I don't know how to describe it, though. Anyway, he's immediately, like, thrust into a death game. He is immediately thrust into partnership with a girl to survive the death game. And he acts really crummy towards her for a good, like, 3 days in-game, or 4. And even at one point attempts to kill her after being, you know, tempted by one of the game leaders, like one of the head honchos, to kill his own partner because, like, then they'll be free. And it's like... So like, you get the sense that this character is, like, a total piece of shit. But he starts warming up because he's, you know, introduced to other humans who are kind to him, and Shiki, the girl, is always trying her best to, or at least put on the brave face, you know, to be a good partner, to be a leader. But something happens in the story, and the dynamic is flipped. Shiki is suddenly despondent. She is, not because he tries to kill her, shockingly, it's another thing that happens in the story. And Neku is suddenly thrust into a position in story where he has to carry the team, or both of them will die. And Shiki's, again, despondent, depressed, thinking like none of this matters, openly nihilistic. And that's Neku, so there's been a role swap, right? And Neku, you know, comes through. He forces his way through all this. He's used to the grounds, like the death game grounds. He's used to the game, what's going on, and he pulls through and, you know, carries the torch all the way through. And they find, you know, I don't want to spoil the story here, but like certain things are discovered about the girl character. You know, she's this way because of X or Y backstory, and it's compelling enough. It's interesting. And we get a lot of truth from Neku specifically, even though he's the bad, like, character, the bad human in almost every interaction up until, like, the 5th or 6th day of the first week. We find out also that he's basically right about everything, that people are phony, that people lie and are cruel and are not really worth paying attention to. And that, yeah, risking hurt by, you know, coming close to other people is ruinous often. Like, people are damaging by design and not meant to fit together very well. And that is not challenged. It's simply proposed that has to be tempered by, you know, regardless, you need to rely on others, and no matter how much of a bastion of individuality you think you aren't really. Like, for all that I, K-Bash, the human, proselytize, is that the right word? Sermonize about how I'm such an individualistic person. At least I do this IRL to myself a lot. Like, I'm pretty sure I you know, stick to myself. I don't do anything by asking for help first. I always just try or like research and all that. Everything has been very individualistic in my life. But I say that knowing that I'm also a married individual, that my wife is my number one emotional support, that my mother helped me through quite a lot of my life by providing at least, like, the whole family in total paid for 3 years of my 5 years of education. I really, you know, I am privileged, and I benefited from other people. And not only that, my entire career right now is built on Patreon effectively and YouTube, but Patreon specifically, people coming out and supporting me directly. Like, it is the case that you can be an individualist, but it is very hard to extricate yourself from the fundamental human condition of togetherness. So, I don't know, I love that game so much for striking that balance between, yes, individuality is important, being yourself is important, not giving a shit about what other people think is important, accepting you is so important. It hits these themes so hard. Neku just drops raw truths. Holy shit. But, you know, again, it is curbed somewhat by, like, there is hope. You can't just think like that. It's cynical and nasty and wrong, and really engenders the same kind of behaviors that Neku believes about other people. Do you know what I mean? Like, he hates other people for, like, being loud, noisy, like, conflicting idiots or whatever. But he's... but he will end up being just as bad as them without finding some collective truth amidst other humans. It's really fascinating to look at and to experience over time. Neku does a full, you know, 180, and then at the end of the first arc, you know, they win the death game. They survive the death game, spoiler alert, because there's 2 other weeks. Man, like, it's just like, it's not like fire writ upon the page. It's not like literary brilliance. It's just really refreshing to see that someone in a position of, like, narrative design or writerly authority actually gives a shit about characterizing people, making them interact, making them interesting, having like ups and downs, and having an actual development. Because Neku, by the end, becomes a positive individual. He's like, you know what? I will hang out with you in the world when we get back to it, Shiki. I won't be an asshole anymore. You know what I mean? Like, you get to see a genuine growth, and it is expedited. It's still on a 7-day schedule, right? There's a lot of character development shoved or whatever, like, manifested over 7 in-game days. And some would argue that's unrealistic. Sure, but it's a game. That's what it was built for, right? Like, expediting the processes here. Man, like, I'm just so impressed because it feels so good. Like, it's not like I'm gonna cry worthy, but I almost, it is like a moving experience to play through. Damn. Sorry, I just really love The World Ends With You, man. Because I've always loved Neku as well. And that sounds weird, I guess. If you've played the game, you know Neku's a piece of shit right off the bat. But he really gets better later. And I do sympathize with a lot of what he says about people, fundamentally. I genuinely think people kind of fucking suck. Not, writ large, not all humanity is garbage, just that, like, people and the conditions of the society we live in, which, Neku is also critical of, create incentives to be nasty, harmful individuals. Like, capitalism is a framework built upon, dog eat dog. The world literally says that. A character says that shit to you. And he's not wrong. That is the condition by which all people operate within. And to be clear, a character death does happen in the first week, and it happens to be an altruistic, kind, caring, sympathetic individual. That's the character who's eaten first, like destroyed first. So again, I'm interested again because I've forgotten a lot about everything after the first week, but goddamn, it was like amazing to go back. See a lot of my own personal philosophy parroted back at me, and then, challenged, at least when I was younger, challenged and meeting a new conclusion or whatever, finding a hopeful silver lining in there. Anyway, sorry, I'm just rambling about some shit I love. I cannot wait to get through more of that game and finally get to Neo TWEWY. I've been waiting for this forever. I'll hit you with that shit. It's still coming, like I said in the Q&A, by I think 3 months. Or is it 2 months from now? I'm doing the math in my head. It'll be out eventually, but I have to go through No More Heroes and some other stuff first. So catch you then next time when I have a revelation